Hello, everybody. Hi, everyone. It's me, Psychic Sean. Hope y'all are all having a wonderful day. Hi, Lisa. So today's going to be a bit of an interesting topic. I was contemplating doing a live broadcast on this the past couple of days, and I got home today in this torrential downpour and felt really inspired to discuss grief. You're gonna hear beeping in the background. That's my microwave because I put some edamame warming in the microwave, and I turned my stove on. I turned my oven on because I was gonna put a pizza in there, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that until I do this discussion. Hi, Anisha. Grief is a bittersweet teacher. Anybody who's lost anyone, friend, family member, pet, anybody who's lost anybody or anything or any whatnot, has at some point suffered from grief. And hi, Lisa. And grief comes in really odd ways. We know that there's stages to grief, and laid out by Mary Kubler-Ross in Death and Dying. And I don't know all the stages by heart. I know there's anger and sadness, and there's sadness, anger, denial, bargaining, and acceptance. I think it's the 5 stages of grief. Or I think it's sadness, anger, denial, bargaining, and acceptance. First is denial. Okay, cool. So I knew those were the 5, but I didn't know what order they go in. And so we go through this process, and I've noticed some people. Now, I don't really think that they are set in that order. I think people go through them at different times. I think they go through those different ones at different times. Sometimes you feel them all at once. Sometimes you feel them at different times. But she talks about them, and as a medium and as a minister, I tried to study up a bit on this, and a good bit. And I really tried to study up on this after I lost my mother. And I wanted to understand the stages of grief. I wanted to understand grief. I wanted to get to know grief. I wanted to become friends with grief, because my job as a medium, people don't tend to come to me when they're in a good mood. People do. They do it sometimes. Hi, Jennifer. But people tend to want to reconnect with their loved ones when they're sad, when they're grieving, and to help them get through grief. And so I wanted to become friends with grief because I understood that this would be something that I would encounter often. And I wanted to have a good relationship with grief. And then grief came back into my life with my father's passing. And me and grief were on rocky terms. And grief and I were on rocky terms. And I was okay. I had some acceptance. And I've had some regrets, and I've had some sadness, and I've had some anger. I haven't really done the denial because I acknowledge my father's past. But I've noticed through his passing and dealing with the grief with him, how I grieve. And one of the stages of my grief process is dreams. When my mother passed, it was a few months after she had died that I started having these horrific dreams. And I do believe, I'm sorry, my neck is hurting. I slept really badly last night due to bad dreams, and my neck's hurting tonight. Um, these were horrific dreams where denial was trying to express itself through my subconscious. And I had a dream when my mother passed that she was getting up in the morning, that we were getting ready for bed, and she was telling me, she's like, I need you to drive me to the airport in the morning so I can go out of town, go out of state. And I said, okay, sure, that's not a problem. Just make sure you let me bring you so I can say goodbye. In the dream, I wake up, I see my dad in the kitchen, I go talk to him, and I'm like, hey Dad, where's Mom? And he's like, oh, she left. And I said, well, where'd she go? And he's like, well, she left, like she went to the airport. And I said, well, she wasn't gonna leave until I got to say goodbye. When is she coming back? And he said, she's not coming back. And I went, well, I know not coming back, like I know it's gonna be a while, but when? And he said, she's not coming back. She left us. She doesn't love us anymore, and she doesn't want to be around us anymore, and so she left. And I woke up from this dream in a cold sweat, crying, bawling my eyes out. And I was kind of catatonic for 3 days, because my dreams, when I do have them like this, they're extremely vivid. They're in complete technicolor. They are bright, vivid, and extremely realistic. And I woke up, and for a day, I had honestly thought my mom had left and didn't die, that she had left us, and that she didn't love us anymore. And I know with her, that was denial. That was that she's not dead, she just left. And I'm sure at some point, some part of me accepted that as a better idea than her having died. And that one hurt really hard. I still haven't fully healed from that dream. And it's been 5 years. Well, last night, I had other dreams with my mother that were hard to get through, and then some of them were really, really good dreams. I mean, beautiful dreams with my mother. And where I know she was helping me heal, and I am grateful for those. With my father, last night I had a dream that he was destitute and couldn't pay his bills and couldn't survive and was choosing to die. And because he had just gotten overwhelmed with everything, and was telling me that he didn't understand why I didn't want to help him and why I didn't love him. And that was hard, because I woke up again, sat up in the middle, just woke up in the middle of the night, and for a few minutes I thought it was real. I thought, there was this abandonment, and there was a lot of these issues. And of course, I pulled myself out of it, and I realized that this was just my anxiety and my grief with his passing. It has been a hard couple days, and I'm okay, but it's been a hard couple days. Sunday morning, before I went to bed, because I worked Sunday night, I realized that I didn't have any photos with my father. I have photos of my dad, and I have photos of me that he took, but I don't have any photos with him. And I kind of cried for about an hour, and I felt so guilty, and I felt so bad about that I let my pain and my angers and my issues with him keep me from wanting to take pictures with my dad. And then Spirit came in and reminded me why I'm a medium. So I get to work at the hospital, and there's 2 parking garages that people use. There's one that's more public for everybody, all the patients and their visitors, and there's one that's more used by personnel and staff only. And because the entrance from that parking garage into the hospital, you have to badge in. And so I get to the entrance, and there's a lady waiting outside the door, and I said, can I help you? You look lost. And she's like, yeah, I'm trying to get back to the ICU. And I said, yeah, I can help you. So I badge in, and I help her find the ICU. And on the way there, she's telling me how, she says, I'm here to visit my dad. And I said, I'm so sorry to hear that. She's like, yeah, he's dying. They don't think he's going to make it through the night. I had to take a step back because that was very emotional. And all I heard in my head was my mom saying, Sean, tell her. And I said, I'm so sorry to hear about your father. I said, I know how hard it is to watch someone you love die. I said, my father passed away from cancer a week ago. And she looked at me. She's like, I'm so sorry to hear that. And I said, don't worry, this is about you. I said, I'm so sorry to hear that. She said, yeah, it's been really hard because my mom passed away a few years ago. And that took me back. And I hear my mom again, Sean, tell her. I said, okay. I said, I understand that too. My mother passed 5 years ago as well. And so there was a lot of commonalities there. And then I hear my mom and she's like, remember, everything painful for you is meant to be something healing for someone else. And I said, okay. So I looked at her and I said, I want you to know that no matter how alone you feel in this circumstance of having lost your mom a few years ago and now you're dealing with losing your dad, know that we share this burden. I know what it feels like to be in that exact scenario. And you are not alone. And I am sure they are taking great care of him in the ICU and that he's at peace. And she's like, thank you really much. It's just really hard. And I said, I completely understand. Can I give you a hug? I gave her a hug. And I said, just know you're not alone. You are not alone. And so she perked up and then we parted ways. And it goes back to remind me about how that day I started off having issues with grief, and me and grief were at odds as friends. And then at the end of the day, we became friends again. Grief is hard to look in the face and acknowledge and say, okay, I don't like you, but we should be friends. Because if you embrace grief, if you take it in, it can teach you a lot about yourself. And for me, the past couple of days, how I've been grieving my father, and the fact that even though him and I didn't have the best relationship or as good of a relationship as my mother and I am grieving for him the exact same way that I grieved with my mother. Internally, like I'm having these dreams from the subconscious that are very vivid. This is teaching me how grief speaks to me. And it speaks to me through my soul and my subconscious. And it is very vocal and imagery and full of imagery and intuition and spirit. And it's teaching me that at the end of the day, my emotions and my feelings about situations are really spirit driven, are really, I don't mean spirit as in loved ones, but universe driven. But I'm processing his grief very, very quickly. It's been only a week since my dad has passed, and I'm already having these things where it's coming up where I have to help somebody else heal. And it's beautiful, and I'm grateful for it, and I'm glad that I could have helped this woman. And so I wanted to come on and talk about things with grief, because we tend to be like, no, I'm not going to grieve. I'm not going to grieve. I'm not going to do this. I'm not acknowledging this. I'm ignoring it. But when we ignore it, we shove it down. We push it down. And it doesn't die. It doesn't go away. It festers. It ferments. It nauseates us. It causes issues. I can't judge anyone for that, because I do that too. I push down my grieving, especially when I'm around others, because I generally hold myself to this idea of that, I'm the healer. I can take care of my own stuff. Nobody else should really worry about my grieving but me. Right or wrong, that's what I do. I shouldn't, but it's what I do. And I've done it. I've been like that way I've been that way for a very long time, especially since my mom passed. Because when I was grieving and when I was going through something hard, I'd always go to my mom. And I still do. I go to her in spirit, but it's now a very private conversation between her and I. And so I feel like I have to be everybody else's rock. I totally get it, Anisha. And I'm not dogging you and I'm not downing you for people who hold back and be strong for yourself so you can be strong for everyone else. I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with it, but you have to take grief in and become good friends with grief. You have to learn how to identify grief. You have to learn how to be best friends with grief, because you have to be able to self-realize when you are specifically grieving. You have to be able to identify your grieving so you can face it head on and say, hey, I know this is grief, but we need to heal versus just having issues. And so I, woke up last night around 1:30 from that dream, and I grabbed my pillow, grabbed my blanket, and I went lay on the couch like I was some kid with a stomach ache from school, and comforted myself. I laid there and cried a little bit. I laid there and watched some relaxing YouTube videos and just laid there and cried and felt sorry for myself for a few minutes. And it helped. It helped to be weak with myself. And I got up from the couch. I came back and lay down in bed, and I went to sleep, and I woke up, and I'm still emotional. It's still been a hard day. But I went hang out at my friend's shop and spend the day there because it makes me really happy, and supported her on her anniversary of her shop being open for a year. And I spent the day doing what makes me happy. I was supposed to go and buy death certificates for my father today. I was not, under any circumstances, tackling that today, because I knew that the minute I got one of those death certificates in my hand, I was going to lose it. I knew it. And I didn't want to be somewhere I didn't want to be. I didn't want to drive downtown. I didn't want to go to a funeral home. And that's okay. Okay? In grief, you should grieve. When you are grieving, you should grieve. And one of the things that is required in grieving is comforting. Doing for yourself what comforts you. I did not want to be downtown. I didn't want to be on Carrollton. I didn't want to be at a funeral home. I didn't want to be dealing with seeing my dad's name on a death certificate. I accept that he's passed. I accept that he's dead. But I don't want to see his name on a death certificate today. I don't want to deal with that legal stuff today. So I'm going to go tomorrow. And I'm going to sit home. I'm going to watch another. Hi, Rebecca. I'm going to watch another episode. I'm going to watch another Harry Potter movie. I think I'm on Goblet of Fire. And I'm going to enjoy my night. I'm going to eat my pizza and my edamame. And I bought some alcohol. I'm going to have a bit of a drink tonight. I'm going to just rest and enjoy the rain and just be for a bit, because I need to comfort myself right now, and I need to heal, and I'm not going to get drunk, but I'm going to realize that I'm grieving today. And so when it comes to you and it comes to dealing with grief in your life, how are you facing it? How are you acknowledging grief? I'm still grieving over my mother who died 5 years ago, and here's my dad dropped dead in 5 days when he was supposed to have 2 months. And because he didn't tell us everything, I'm angry because I was about to say something inappropriate. I'm angry because he didn't tell us how bad off his health was. I'm angry because I wanted to get so much done with him before he passed, and he kept dragging his feet. I'm angry because he was in denial that he was dying. I'm angry that he didn't want to accept it. And I'm angry that he didn't want to talk about it. But that was his right. He had the right to do that. He is the one who was dying. if he didn't want to face it, that was his choice. But I have the right to be angry about it. And I'm healing from that. I'm doing things to fix my grief. I have a friend of mine who's an amazing portrait artist. She's an amazing artist. And I've commissioned her to paint a portrait of a picture of my father and a picture of I that I really like, and ask her to paint a portrait of us together. So that I have a photo of him and I together. And that's going to be hard and emotional because it's not going to be as good as a photo. But it's better than nothing. And I acknowledge that he wanted to protect me and protect us, and I get that. But one of the issues between my father and I was that he always treated me like a child. My father always treated me like I had never grown up past the age of 5. And so him not wanting to talk to me and him hiding things from me and not opening up to me like my mother did, who always treated me like an adult, even when I was a kid, was hard. It added to the issues between him and I. And that's another thing, it's okay to have these issues when you're grieving. It's okay to deal with these things. Grief is a non-Newtonian fluid. A non-Newtonian fluid does not act like normal fluid. For instance, if you punch into water, your hand goes in and it hits the surface a bit, there's some surface tension and it hits, and your hand goes in. Well, a non-Newtonian fluid like oobleck, which is made from cornstarch and water, when you hit it, it becomes rigid, it becomes hard, and your hand doesn't just go into it. It becomes a solid. It becomes solid when you add a lot of pressure. When you inflict pressure on oobleck, it becomes solid. And when you relax and you just hold oobleck and you just let it ooze out of your hands, it's liquid. And so it's a non-Newtonian fluid because it doesn't act like an actual fluid. And so grief is kind of like oobleck. When you are hard with grief and you're hard on yourself, there's resistance. It hits and it becomes solid and it becomes immovable and it becomes hard because you're pushing back and you're hitting back and you're hurting and you're beating it up. But when you just embrace it and you learn to try to understand it and you let it just flow through you, it becomes soft and it becomes liquid and it just runs its course. And I've learned that with the loss of both my parents, which is still a sore subject because it's one of the things that's been hard for me to realize is that both my parents are dead. And I'm only 32, and both my parents are gone. And so you have to let grief run its course. You have to embrace grief, and you have to not get angry at grief. You can get angry, but don't get angry at grief. Grief is there to help you heal through what's going on. It's there to help you move through the pain and the loss and the issues surrounding grief, whatever's bringing grief into your life. When you fight against it, when you push back against that grief, it becomes rigid and immovable, and it won't leave, and it won't do what it has to do. Because it's going to be your rock. It's going to be hard. It's going to defend itself because it knows it can't go anywhere. It has to stay. until you're healed. And that can take days, weeks, months, years. I mean, grief has no time scale on it. Life really has no time scale on it. Time is a construct, but grief can take as long as it takes. I know helping that lady at the hospital helped me heal. Hey, Alicia. Sorry I waited so long on that. But helping her at the hospital really helped me, because it was, while I let her know she's not alone, it reminded me that I'm not alone either. And that healed me a bit, because I love helping others heal. When I'm in a bad place, when I'm in a hard place, I do more readings. Like y'all can see, like I've been doing readings again, and when I get in a harsh place, I want to help. I want to get that moving. I want to turn to spirit and do spirit's work and be a healer. Because if I can see the healing that I'm giving others, then I can see the healing that I'm doing on myself. And it's really weird. And so you have to embrace the grief. You have to take it on. You have to feel it and let it move through you and let it wash through you. It comes with sadness. It comes with anger. It comes with denial. It comes with acceptance. And it comes with depression. And so, I think it's depression, not sadness, depression. It comes with all of these emotions and all of these moments, but they can be beautiful moments too. I was expressing to someone the other day that sadness isn't bad. Sadness is water that flows into your soul and finds the places that are empty and helps you realize what parts of your soul and what parts of you need healing. And it helps you acknowledge where you're feeling empty. And that sadness washes through and cleans out those empty spots and allows you to make room for love in those spaces that were once filled with cobwebs and anger and depression and regret and let you fill them with love. And that sadness, we cry sadness and tears, but tears wash the soul clean of sadness. They let that sadness flow, and they let you identify that I'm feeling empty in this space in my life. This sadness, I'm sad because of X, Y, and Z, and I'm sad because my father's gone. That sadness cleans out and cleanses out that part of my heart that is grieving for the loss of my dad, and allows it to be fresh and cleaned and ready for me to put love into and fill it with love for my dad on the other side, so he can show me that he's okay. And if I was carrying around this depression and I didn't let this sadness wash that emptiness, that empty space clean, it would be filled with anger and regret and all these things that would hinder the healing. So let yourself be sad. Like, as soon as I'm off this live broadcast, I'm going to go cry my eyes out while I'm fixing my food. And I'm going to let these tears of sadness run through. And I'm going to feel them. And if I feel I need to talk to somebody, I'm going to reach out. Because know that if you ever feel like you're in a place where you shouldn't be dealing with this alone, reach out. Because sometimes we need someone there to hold our hands, or, we're in that river of sadness and we're afraid we're going to get, washed away because of how intense it is. You reach out for a lifeline. You reach out for someone who can hold your hand. You reach out for somebody who has a life preserver, and do not ever feel guilty or bad about reaching out and asking for help when you're dealing with grief. Sometimes you want to be alone, and that's okay. But don't hermit yourself away as if there's something wrong with the fact that you're grieving. Don't pull yourself away from support systems. Don't pull yourself away from healing because part of you feels guilty because you want to heal. My father and I had a really hard relationship. We did not talk very well. Every time we would talk, we'd argue about all kinds of stuff, and I didn't really start forgiving him until the end. And I feel guilty about that, And I feel really guilty about the fact that I'm mourning him as much as I am, because I can't tell you how many people I've called and complained to about my dad, and just complained about him, and how many times I've said I hated the man, how many times I said I didn't like the man. And I sit here, and I have since been grieving his passing, and I feel at times guilty because of how much grief I have, and I'm worried on some level that it's fake, or it's an act, or it's a show. But it doesn't matter. Guilt, ignore guilt, because it's okay to feel what you feel. It's okay to not feel what you don't feel. I grieve my father more for the relationship him and I are never. I grieve for the relationship that my father and I could have had while he was alive, but I am grateful that him and I will have that relationship now that he's passed. I know, even since his passing, I have felt him around me, and I have felt him, and I have smelled his cologne. I have had signs from him, and I know that him and I will have a beautiful relationship with him now in spirit, and I am grateful for that. But I grieve that we couldn't have that relationship while he was alive. And now we're not able to have that relationship with him alive. And that is one of the things I'm grieving. And so I'm not as much grieving him. I am, but I'm grieving more of what we could have had. And so don't beat yourself up about what it is specifically that you're grieving about, because there's no right or wrong way to grieve, so long as you don't hurt yourself and you don't hurt other people. It's okay. Don't abuse yourself. Don't abuse others. Reach out for help. It's okay to have a drink or two here and there. Don't get sloshed drunk, because you might hurt yourself in the process. But it's okay to feel all of those steps and all of those stages and all of those stepping stones in the process, in the journey to heal. And this goes for everything, whether it's a loss of a parent, whether it's the loss of a pet or a best friend or a brother or sister or a cousin. It doesn't matter the relationship. I've had, who was it? A friend of a friend passed away. And this person was young and healthy. And I got super emotional about this person passing. I can't remember exactly who it was. It's been a year or so. And I got really, really emotional about this person's passing. And I didn't even really know them. And I grieved this person because they were so young. And so don't be ashamed to grieve who and how and what you grieve about. Grief should be your best friend, because grief can teach you a lot about yourself. It can teach you where you're weak. It can teach you where you're strong. It can teach you how you feel about the world around you. The fact that both times I've had these really, really intense, graphic, real dreams surrounding their passing tells me that my subconscious processes this very, very hard on levels in which I don't consciously realize. And so I need to remember that just because I might feel okay, subconsciously I might be tearing it up. I may not be in a good place subconsciously at all, and I need to be aware of that. And so my subconscious could also be in a much better place than I am, and it's just trying to make me realize the issues I have and trying to help me through it really quickly. I'll have to figure that out. But I really just wanted to come on here, and this wasn't really talking about the stages of grief, the science of grief, the psychology of grief. This was about just talking about grieving and grief, and discussing it and letting you know that, it's okay to grieve someone, not because of who they were, but because of who you could have been with them. I have known multiple people who've expressed to me after when I've mentioned this, that, oh man, that's exactly how I was grieving this person. Not for the relationship, not for who they were, but the relationship I won't get to have with them anymore. Like, I grieve the relationship that I wish I could have had with my father. Not as much as I actually grieve my actual father. I grieve his passing a lot. Don't get me wrong. But I grieve even more for the relationship that I wish we could have had, but won't have the chance to anymore. Now, I know as a medium, I know that he's on the other side. I know that he's in love and light. I know he's walking in eternity, and he's happy, healthy, and whole. And I know the relationship with him is going to be far better now than it could ever have been in life. But I still wish we could have had a better relationship in life. And that's okay. And that's part of what I'm grieving, is not what I had, but what I wish I would have had. And so understand that grief can be complicated and complex, and it can lead you in so many different directions in your life. Don't overcorrect. Don't course correct. Take things slow. Embrace everything. Feel it. Experience it. Understand it. See beyond the pain of it, and see into the teaching of it and the lessons of it. What is it trying to tell you? What is it trying to illuminate within you? What is it trying to heal within you? And be aware of how your grief flows through you. It's okay to cry. It's okay to yell. It's okay to write in your journal and toss the journal against the wall. It's okay to scream in a pillow. It's okay to punch a pillow. I do not suggest violence unless it is to a pillow. I do not condone violence of any kind unless it is to a pillow. It's okay to express your stages of grief. Don't let them wallow and fester. Let them move through you. Accept them, embrace them, and let them heal you. Let them move through you, and then let them go. Take as much time as you need, but make sure that you're not making it take longer than it needs to. Make sure you're not fighting back against it. Make sure you're not forcing it to linger because you feel like you should grieve longer. Don't rush it because you feel like grieving should be short. You might have hated somebody, and grieving this person could take years, and absolutely loved somebody, and grieving take minutes. You never know. So don't judge yourself while you're in your grief, and don't, by all means, judge your grief. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt anyone else. Do your best to not take it out on others. It can happen, but apologies should follow. And be open with the people around you. Let them know you're grieving. Let them know you're going through something that's hard and difficult. And whether or not they embrace it or expect it or accept it or help you or support you, doesn't matter. Be open and honest. I'm having a rough day. When I got into work after that, when I got into my telemetry office Sunday after I met with that woman who told me, we talked about her father passing, I was a bit of an emotional wreck. I got in there, did what I had to do, did the shift change, and I sat down with my coworker and I said, hey, I'm not in a good place right now. I'm probably not going to be very talkative tonight. And she's like, that's okay. We talked a little bit about, she knew my father's passing. She was a great coworker, and I was very thankful to have her there, and she was very understanding, and so it was really easy to work with her, because there was a couple of times where I broke down and pulled myself back together and went back to work, and she was understanding and she was okay with it, and she made it easy. And then her and I started laughing about stuff and joking, and it was good. It wasn't about her accepting that I was grieving. It was about that I told her. I was open with her. I let her know that I'm anxious. My anxiety is high today because I'm in this mode. If I snap, I apologize. It's not. I don't mean to. I was very aware of how I was speaking to her. I made sure that I didn't snap at her if something happened, but I let her know that it might, if it catches me off guard. I'm just not in that most aware of a place. And luckily I didn't snap at her, but I told her, I warned her, and I apologized up front. But I didn't let that be an excuse to be abusive. I told her it might happen, and then I held myself accountable and aware, and I tried to make sure it didn't happen, and luckily it didn't. If it would have happened, if something would have happened, I immediately would have apologized. I would have taken a couple minutes, gone for a walk, stepped outside, removed myself from the situation, cried, and then come back. I would have done what I needed to do to make it right. So I'm not going to say sometimes we don't lash out for no reason, but you always take ownership and you take acknowledgement of it and you do better. But the more open, the more honest, and the more you reach out to the people around you, the faster, the better, and the faster and the better you're going to heal. And the healing will be honest and full, because instead of isolating yourself and making yourself feel alone in your process, you're going to realize that you're not alone and that others go through this and have been through the exact same situation. And you're going to be showing yourself that even in dealing with grief, you're still strong and capable of being present in your life. And that's a big part of healing through grief, is that knowing that as hard and as tough as things might be, you're present. So, I'm gonna leave you all with that. If you have any questions about grief, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. I'm always here. I thank y'all all so very much for tuning in to this live broadcast about grief. I hope it didn't give anyone the wrong ideas about what I was going to be discussing. I am not a psychologist or a licensed clinical social worker. I don't have any licensure to be talking about grief. I'm only speaking about it through deep personal experiences. And I hope it resonates and helps you feel better and lighter in your grief in your life. I'm a healer. I'm a medium. I'm a minister. That is what I aspire to do, is alleviate others from sadness and grief and helping them find the light and healing. So I hope I have helped you with that today. And know that I will always be open and honest about what goes on in my life. I will always teach from a place of personal perspective, and I will always be as honest and truthful with the people that I share my advice with and my words of wisdom with, because I think that's the point of being a healer, is that it doesn't do any good if I sell you a $5 lie just because it's pretty. If it doesn't have a lot of worth to it and it doesn't do you much good, then what's the point? So thank you all so much for tuning in. It's always a pleasure. I appreciate everyone's prayers, and thank you, and thank you for all of your condolences for my father's passing. Feel free to share this video. Until next time, and as always, in love and light.